Hey guys, today I'm going to share with you another video about my planning and journaling system. The last video I shared on this topic was me going through my daily planners. This helps me with forward thinking, like looking into the future and planning my days, weeks and months, and also this pocket notebook which sits at the back of my planner, which I take everywhere with me to just write down my everyday thoughts. Both of those videos that I have made on these topics will be linked in the description box. But today I want to talk about my journal. This is more of a logbook detailing what has happened in my life, from things that are day-to-day experiences to social events to realizations that I've had about life, to my emotional landscape, to movies I've liked. Basically, like, it's just a snapshot of each day of my life. It is very personal, so when I edit this video I'm going to slightly blur the contents, which I'm sure you can understand, but you'll still be able to get a really good feel of what I do and how I set it up, because I know I love watching these videos to get ideas for my own journal. So yeah, I wanted to share mine in case it gives you any inspiration. Okay, so this is my journal. It's a, how do you say it, Leutram 1917 softback dotted papered journal. I slowly over time add stickers to the front and the back, and on the first page I stole this idea from Austin Kleon. It's the idea of guardian spirits, and it's how he, I guess, blesses a new notebook, and specifically his diary. And I thought it was such a lovely idea. So here I have Mary Oliver, a very famous poet, I'm sure you know her. We have Virginia Woolf, and one of Virginia Woolf's quotes, which is a quote I am keeping in mind in this chapter of my life: I am rooted but I flow. And also Aurora, who is a songwriter who I adore. And of course Alfie, my dog, who is always keeping me rooted. And then I always just put the date that I start the diary or journal on, and once I finished it I'll come back and write the end date as well. I'd say like each journal like this lasts me about a season usually. So yeah, that's the first page. I don't tend to use the contents pages. So this is the setup that I use on a almost daily basis. There are some days where I don't bother to do this because I don't have the energy, or I'm busy, or whatever, you know, life gets in the way. It's never going to be perfect, and that's one of the things that I just said to myself, like, I have to accept if I want to keep a journal and a diary, because what's the point in keeping a journal and a diary if it's going to be something that stresses you out? And believe me, I know I've been there, and I was stressed out for a long time about keeping a journal, and it's just got to the point where if I don't do it for a week, that's fine. I just like that I can show up when I can. So anyway, this is an idea, two ideas merged together. One is Cal Newport's idea of time blocking the day, and the other one is, I forget who I read this from, but it's a widely known concept. I believe it was the guy that came up with the bullet journaling concept. His name escapes me right now. But the idea of having like a logbook of what you've done in the day. So this is literally a factual statement around what I ended up doing the day. So to take this day, for example, which was the 1st of January 2024, I wrote out what I did exactly that day, and that was things like walk my dog, admin, lunch, leisure time, Substack, bath, dinner, journal. That I do at the beginning of the day so that I have a vague idea of kind of the chunks of time that I'm going to have during the day. It just helps me not get too stuck between transitioning between activities. It's specific enough that I don't forget what I want to do, but it's broad enough, for example, just saying leisure, that I don't feel like I'm under a lot of pressure to do the things that I said I would do at the outset of the day if later on I don't really feel like I want to do them, if that makes sense. So say, for example, with leisure, if I'd have been more specific and said I want to read this book, or I want to do this puzzle, or I want to watch this TV program, and it came to it and I didn't really feel like doing that, the demand avoidance of like having something so specific would just make me give up on my day or give up on the journal. So I've learned over time that actually having broader categories of what I want to do with my time, but still using the time blocking method, is a balance that works quite well for me. Here I leave enough room so that if, for example, I was intending to walk Alfie at 8:30, but then something happened, like, I don't know, say my alarm didn't go off and I woke up at 9:30 instead, I would be able to change my plans by striking this out and redrawing what I was going to be doing next to it. So let me give you an example. So here, for example, this is a good example. I ended up not sleeping very well that night. So instead of getting up at 6:30 to go swimming, I slept in, and I struck out the swim and I wrote sleep in instead. And again, down here, the afternoon didn't quite go to the plan that I'd had. So I just wrote what else happened instead. And that way it's really nice because it kind of helps me to want to stick to a plan and to give me, as I say, that like that routine and structure around my time, which I really need. Otherwise I just don't do anything. But it's also flexible enough so that if I do run behind or my plans change, then I can still quite quickly and easily change my plan and see how that affects the rest of my day. So yeah, as I was saying, on this side, this is where I kind of go into the more detail about what each time block means. So for example, like in the admin section, I've written exactly what I did. So I paid my therapist, I planned a trip, I responded to voice notes from a friend. Those sorts of things I like to note down as and when I do them. So the admin section is broad, but then the more specific things that I decided to do within that admin section are noted so that I remember what I did. And it's also really helpful for like someone who, well, like me, I don't have the most fantastic working memory. So often when I make notes like this, it's very helpful to be able to flip back and realize that, oh no, I did pay my therapist. It's okay. And I also like to note down little things here, like things that I'm grateful for, things that I've noticed that just caught my attention and made me smile, or whatever it might be. Like here I wrote walking Alfie. I ran out of poo bags and had to ask a fellow dog walker for some. It was the first time. Things like that. And then at the top, I was including a habit tracker in here for the whole week that covers the habits that I want to make sure that I'm covering each day. For me, that looks like sleep, medication, movement, water, food, and energy. And I love this habit tracker, but I don't love having it in this journal because when I put each day down, I have to look back at the habit tracker on the first page, and I just forget to do that. So instead, I've included the habit tracker in my daily diary now, where at least I can see it on the page. So every day when I open this and I do my to-do list, I also update my habit tracker, and it's because I can see it. When I see it, I remember it exists. If I don't see it, I don't remember it exists. And that's a point that I just want to say at the forefront of all of this, is that like it's okay if things change in your of how you want to use your planner. I know that sometimes it can feel quite like you want to know exactly how you're going to use your planner from the outset and then make sure that you're using it that way the whole way through. But I don't know, for me that is just like not realistic, and I have to make peace with the fact that I'm always going to change the way I use things throughout a book, and that's part of the joy of the whole process. And you will end up with a system that suits you a lot better than if you just try and like white knuckle grip onto what you've already decided you're going to do, even when it's not really serving you. And then the last portion of my daily journal page setup is this section, which is basically a reading log. I just like to note down the book that I'm reading. So in this situation, I'd finished Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport on the 1st of January. So I wrote down that I'd finished it. I like to include a little cutout of the book as a visual reminder. And I wrote down the number of pages that I read that day. This was a day where I wanted to write about, for example, some of the stuff that I ended up doing in the week between Christmas and New Year. I wanted to write about how my YouTube videos were going, and I wrote a little bit about this poem by Mary Oliver that I found that I really loved via Substack. This is really like just whatever. I don't have rules around what I can and cannot write in this journal when it comes to reflecting on my day or reflecting on my week. There will just be things that I kind of know that I want to make note of or remember, memories that I want to be able to look back on, milestones that I feel like I don't want to forget, or inspirational things that I come across that I want to kind of like keep a note of to be able to look back on. This is another page of, well, the next day of my daily planning, so you can see it looks pretty similar. At this point I was using pencil because I was still getting used to this setup in this new book. but later on I do end up going into pen, getting more confident. And again, that day I was obviously in the spirit of wanting to write lots, so here I was planning a trip that I'm taking in February with Andrew. This was a Mary Sarton quote that I really loved and wanted to remember, and another trip that I was also planning to see one of my friends. And I should have mentioned, this is me starting another book, Burn Rate by Andy Dunn. The next day I actually booked the tickets for the trip that I was planning, so I cut out some of the receipts that I got from the airline. I included my packing list, which was not only practically really helpful but also quite a nice reminder for the trip. I also included a little note about the presents that I wanted to take for the friend that I was visiting. And then whenever I have like spare space, I just like to include stickers and washi tape that I collect. This day was I would say a fairly uneventful, normal day of my life. I mean, I went to the dentist and I bought some sweets at M&S, and I bought some stuff from Bagu, which, by the way, as someone who lives in the UK, was a terrible idea because I didn't realise that the tax would have to be paid separately and it was so expensive. So I won't be buying from them again, but yeah, it was fun whilst it lasted. Started another book here, so I started My Weird Sisters by Joanne Lindberg. Again, just a fairly standard day in my life. Read all of my Substack inbox for the week in a coffee shop and took notes on it. So nice. 2 decaf black coffees. I mean, it's just little details that just take me back to the day. It just helps me to, like, I guess, remember what I did. So yeah, I included a little picture of the coffee shop that I ended up going to, and one of the pieces or the quotes that I loved from my time spent in the coffee shop reading through my Substack newsletters. I also, by this point in the week, had watched quite a few things and movies, and I don't include every single thing I watch. Mostly it's the things that I really enjoy or that I want to remember for some reason. One of those things was the Society of Snow? It was very harrowing but incredible, and I wanted to remember it, even though now I can't remember the bloody name of the name of the film. But you know, whatever. I also watched this film, Good Grief, which I wasn't overly impressed with. Felt like it was a bad script and it was quite tropey, but I wanted to include it because the aesthetics of it were absolutely beautiful. And yeah, here I was journaling about a present for a friend. And then this is a good example of a day or 2 days where I really didn't have anything extra to journal about, so I just made the brief notes in my logbook of like what I did that day, of anything that I kind of thought was interesting or wanted to take note of. I watched Thank You, I'm Sorry on Netflix, which I thoroughly recommend, so good. And I started a new book, Deep Work by Cal Newport. Oh yeah, and I got into the habit of kind of noting down the weather for a little bit, which was quite fun. Here's a good example of when I went on my trip and I got busy and I didn't end up logbooking that day because I was busy and tired, and I know that I spent all of this afternoon with my friend and I journaled about it later, but I didn't feel the need to kind of go into detail in my logbook that day, and that's like totally fine. I just didn't. I also, from this point on, don't read for like 10 days because I went on a trip, I was super tired, my routine got messed up, whatever, like I found other things to do, and that's okay too. The good thing about putting the number of pages and what I'm reading down here, I find, is that I realise like, oh, I'm not reading as much because I'm not filling this in. It reminds me, oh, I'm not reading as much. Okay, I'm going to try and integrate that into my day. So it's like a good way to keep track, I guess, of the habits that I actually really want to get back on track with. This is just a like washi tape piece of art that I made whilst I was with my friend. They had this amazing collection of washi tape and I wanted to make a collage whilst we were talking to kind of remind me of that afternoon, which I love. And then this is a full collage page of all of what we did, like all of the little reminders, the little things that we did together. I've included like maps, cutouts of sweet packets that we had, cupcakes that they made, movies that we watched, takeaway that we had. These are all sort of, receipts that I cut up. We've got pictures from the time we spent together that I printed out with my little mini printer, pictures of the Airbnb that I stayed in, a little snapshot of one of our conversations via text afterwards. Just love it. Really like gives the vibe again for me in a very visual way of like that stay. Yeah, the next few days I was so tired. I skipped a few days because I was tired from travel, and I also didn't really have that much to say because my days were looking very samey. I didn't have anything to journal about because all I was doing was recovering from the trip, trying to get back into my routines. So all of this is pretty boring, even though I really like looking through this again and looking back on what I did. This is a good example of a day where I tried and I failed. I didn't want to do it. So I didn't. I'm never going to force myself to write something I don't want to write down. This is when I start transitioning into pen, getting a little bit more comfortable with the setup that I have been using. Yeah, like this, for example, previously would have bugged me. Every single day up until then, I'd been using my stamp. And this day, I have no idea why, but I couldn't bring myself to use the stamp. So I didn't, and it would have bugged me before, but now I'm like, whatever, it's what I had to do to actually be able to start writing. And that's the most important thing, is just doing what I need to do to be able to write and to record and document. This day was a really fun day. I made a lot of notes about, I think this was more newsletters, like quotes from newsletters that I read. So I stuck that in. This was one of my favourite quotes. I don't know what I think until I write it down. That's Joan Didion. And then I did some more shopping. So I put a little segment down here on shopping that I did for a friend's birthday. I also did a printout of a journal entry that I did on my computer. Quite often, if I'm journaling in the evening, I don't have the energy to write. I write by hand a lot in the morning, but in the evenings I don't know, I just never really feel like it. I like typing, so I typed out a journal entry. And generally when I type, I do a lot of stream of consciousness stuff because I type really quickly. So I just get out what I want to say. And it's usually when I'm trying to wrestle with like an emotion or wrestling with like a feeling about something or not really knowing what direction to go in, I'll do stream of consciousness to try and just like work through it on the page. Here I've got another really lovely page with a friend who we went for a walk and for lunch and a coffee. So I printed out some of the lovely pictures we took and also a little caption on Instagram that my friend made about the day afterwards. Sunday, so this was actually yesterday. This is a really good example of a day where I was like, actually I don't want to structure my day. I really need a day of the week where I don't know what I'm going to do, and sometimes I just really want to follow, like just relax basically and not have any structure to my day. So that's what I did, and I ended up journaling at the end of the day. I included Griselda, which I watched basically back to back. It was incredible. I absolutely loved it. It tells the true story of a Colombian drug trafficker in Miami in the 1980s. Really recommend it. I also went to see All of Us Strangers with some friends, and I made notes in this pocket notebook that I was telling you about whilst we were at the cinema about the film, like how it was filmed, about tone, storyline, like anything that I thought was interesting, and then just took a picture of those pages and printed it out to put in my journal. I absolutely love this film. It wasn't what I was expecting. It was very dark, but I just thought it was absolutely stunningly created, filmed and acted. Yeah. So then I just made a few notes about the film, like facts, like the directors, who the actors were, what it was based on, where I saw it, the kind of themes in the movie. And then last but not least, I had a lot going on in my brain this day. So again, in the evening, I did a little journaling brain dump type stream of consciousness thing. And yeah, that's it. We're on to today, to Monday. So that's the beginning of January for me. I guess that's a month worth of journaling, and I've still got, yeah, about 2/3 of the book left to go. And I love it. I find this to be a very grounding activity. I really enjoy just pausing, taking a moment to look back on my day. I find that I not only appreciate things more, but I also find more continuity in my weeks and my months because of that degree of reflection, and also a huge amount of intentionality about spotting things that work for me and things that don't, and things that I want to pay more attention to, things that I want to pay less attention to, but in a very organic way that doesn't feel like a kind of hyper productivity type situation, which is just not my jam at all. So yeah, I hope that that was interesting and or helpful, and just let me know if there are any questions specifically about this setup, and I'll try and answer them for you. So the thing that I would really just like to end on is hammering home quite how long it can take for you to come up with the system that works for you, and that it's so unique to each person. Because I feel like there's a risk with watching these videos that you watch them and you're like, oh, I want to do that idea, but I can't for this reason, and therefore I'm just not going to journal, or I don't know. I feel like I can put a lot of pressure on myself by watching what other people do and comparing myself, and inspiration is great, but if it comes to the point where it's like putting pressure on you, it's not so great. So just a reality check, like this system, which is by no means like complete, like it's always going to keep changing, is a product of like 3 years of consistent journaling. Like this is just like a third of the books that I filled up over 3 years, and all of these are different. Like I haven't found a consistent practice that has not changed year to year, or even like in the beginning month to month, week to week, because the point is that you can't know what's going to suit you until you just try it. I think that we have this, or I do anyway, this idea that like, or this wish, if it was just as simple as picking a system and then just doing it and it just working forever, then I think we would all probably just like never have problems, never forget anything, never be late, always be doing like, it's always being super productive or whatever. But that's just not life. That's not reality. Like things are always going to change, and you're always going to want to change how you like build the systems around your life, depending on what your life looks like in that season. And yeah, it's kind of like fun if you embrace that and are not so scared of it. And I don't know, some people might be watching this and thinking it sounds kind of wild that you would be stressed about a journal, but I don't know, for me it has been stressful until I just decided that my journal can only represent me, and that there is no right and wrong, and that I have to trust that over time I'll just work out the right systems for me, and that changing things, adapting things, being creative with my journal is the way to get the most out of it. It's not about finding the perfect system and just applying it, or being perfect every single time. And it doesn't matter if you make mistakes, it doesn't matter if you cross things out. If anything, when I've had to cross things out or have made mistakes, that's when I've been more creative, because I've found ways to cover my mistakes up, if you know what I mean. So yeah, this is a product of 3 years of journaling, and I'm just super excited to see where my journaling practice continues to take me. And when I'm like 90 and I get to look back on my life and pick out all of these books and remind myself of the big things and also the silly little things that I did each day, I think I'm going to be really content with this practice. And the cool thing is that like, honestly, I'm not even doing this for my 90-year-old self. I'm doing this for myself now, because I just find so much joy in it. So if you are also a journaler, I hope that there might be seeds of inspiration in this video, but the main takeaway is I believe that we are all going to be practicing our journaling in different ways, and that's kind of the cool thing about journaling. Anyway, thank you for watching, and thank you to all of my patrons on Substack who support me via my newsletter. I really appreciate you guys, and if you're not already signed up to my newsletter, I'll leave a link in the description box in case you want to check it out. And yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!